All right, everyone, welcome to the Energeia podcast. This is Dr. G, and today I'm going to be speaking with David Hearst. Dave is the owner and head instructor at Control Martial Arts in Cleveland, Ohio, and has been practicing and training in multiple martial arts over the course of more than 3 decades. He holds a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu under the tutelage of Roy Harris, who many people will know as one of the true doyens of the discipline, one of the first 2 Americans to attain that rank, and still one of the highest ranked BJJ practitioners in the United States. Dave also holds instructor rank in Muay Thai, Jeet, Kune, Kali, and MKG International Martial Arts, and coach rank in combat submission wrestling under the instruction of Eric Paulson, who was the first American to win a Shuto mixed martial arts title in Japan. And most saliently for me, Dave was my own coach, my own Muay Thai coach, while I was living in the brutal climate of the American Midwest. And I have to say, despite the snowy drive into the gym at stupid o'clock in the morning, those were some of the most energizing, stimulating, and rewarding hours of my life. So Dave, brother, it's so good to see you again. Let me pay my respects, first and foremost, and thanks so much for being here with me today, bro.
Oh, it's an honor. It's so great to be able to reconnect with you and chat with you like this. It's been way too long.
It has been a minute, as they say, man. It has been way too long. And before we get into dissecting some of the specific affordances of some of the different arts that you coach, could you give us a bit more of the lowdown on your background, both as a practitioner and a coach of the various martial arts that you've come to learn yourself and teach others in your career, kind of just the potted biography of your martial arts career?
Sure. So I started back in high school, back in the 90s, and it kind of like a lot of people who got into this stuff, it was from like watching Kung Fu movies and Bruce Lee movies, and I wanted to be able to do that kind of stuff. So in high school, I started doing martial arts. I started with Kempo, a local academy that was near where I grew up, and the instructors there were really very cool. They're very open-minded, and while I was learning, they exposed me to other arts and other disciplines, and they were the ones that kind of turned me on to Jeet Kune Do and some of the instructors who I actually have today. They lent me books to read and all kinds of stuff like that. So as I went, graduated from high school and went off to college, continued to study in college, and it was about my sophomore year that I actually took over martial arts club and kind of reworked it into what at that time was basically an MMA club. And so this is early, this is like UFC 1-2 era, like way back then. So started a group at Ohio University, which my understanding is it's still active, which is pretty cool. And I've actually gone back to OU a couple times and taught seminars there for the group that my friends and I originally started back in the 90s, which is kind of neat. So kept teaching and learning, and then I started traveling when I was in college to see some of the instructors that I still work with today, like Guru Dan Asano, Arjun Chai, Eric Paulson, Francis Fong, a bunch of those kind of people. Traveling around doing seminars, and found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the Cleveland area, got really, really into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, ended up getting my blue belt directly from Hoist Gracie, which was kind of interesting. So kept up with all of that stuff, and then after graduating, after working for a few years, continued to train with various people, continuing to travel around to do different seminars and stuff. I moved to Minnesota to do my graduate work, and it was there that I found the Minnesota Kali group, and they were kind of like a one-stop shop for everything that I was traveling all over the place for. They had the Kali, the JKD, the Muay Thai, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so I was literally there probably for the first 2 years of being in Minnesota. I was there 7 days a week, just like every day there, training, trying to absorb as much as I could, because I knew I was only going to be in Minnesota for maybe 4 years, and I wanted to get as much time in as possible. That eventually rolled into me teaching there a little bit, continued to train, and then graduated, moved back to Cleveland, Ohio, and started practicing. I went to school to become a chiropractor and an acupuncturist, so I started practicing that and was continuing to train on the side. And then it was about, I guess 15 or so years ago now. I guess I know it was 12 years ago. I was starting to, I was having kids, and I was trying to balance the idea of, well, how do I keep training, and how do I have a family, and how do I justify spending all this time on myself and the things I enjoy doing, and still having time with the family. And my coach at the time, my jiu-jitsu coach at the time, I talked to him about it, and he's like, well, why don't you start teaching here part-time, and I'll sublease some space to you. So we struck up a relationship that way, and I started teaching just part-time while I was working full-time, so that way I could continue to at least teach and train a little bit, and I was justifying that time away from my family, because I was it was a side hustle, is basically what it was. And that then just ended up growing into, and became what it is today. It just kept growing and growing. My classes started to get bigger and bigger. We ended up moving out of this horrible garage space. This predates when you came to me. We were literally in a garage space that was behind a car garage, like an auto service place. So like you would smell the exhaust fumes, and you would hear them working on the cars while we were trying to teach, and you're hitting Thai pads and you're breathing in exhaust fumes. It was ridiculous. But he ended up, we parted ways business wise. He ended up opening up his own gym, and I ended up opening up my own gym, which is where you ended up finding me. And since then, we've actually moved into a much larger space, and we've just continued to grow. So it went from me practicing full-time to me then practicing part-time and teaching part-time to now I'm teaching full-time and practicing very, very part-time. So it's just kind of gotten a life of its own, so to speak.
And I mean, as a teacher and as a coach, now that you are teaching full-time and just doing a little bit of training yourself, what is the thing that brings you the most gratification and the most satisfaction when you work with your students, and what keeps you passionate about imparting the wisdom of these martial arts to them?
Yeah, I think when the easiest way to answer that, or kind of the quick answer, would be I think as a teacher, when you're imparting new ideas, we all kind of get addicted to that aha moment where you're trying to convey something and the student may be struggling with it, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I get it, and that is that's like crack almost. And so I mean that's definitely one of the things that keeps me going with it. But just seeing all of the positive impacts that I've had on the kids that I've worked with, the adults that I've worked with, and knowing that I'm providing a positive service that is bettering their life, that is giving them the opportunity to learn a new skill set, but also relieve stress in the process and get more physically fit and take more control over their life. That's what keeps me going. I got into becoming a chiropractor because I really wanted to be able to help people. Prior to that, I was molecular biologist, and I was working in a lab by myself, just running tests, and had almost no interaction with people. And it was interesting work, but I didn't feel like I was doing anything impactful for society, and I was bettering people's lives in any way, or at least any real tangible, measurable way. And going and becoming a chiropractor gave me that, but then now teaching has given me that same thing, is just seeing the positive impact it's had on so many people's lives. That's what's really kept me going with it. I mean, aside from my own love of the arts, and then my thirst for continuing to learn and knowledge and everything, but those aha moments and those positive impacts, that's really what's kept me going.
That's super cool, man. I mean, speaking of impact on society, I mean, it's hardly a new thing now, but the individual discipline that has probably penetrated popular culture and, you know, everyman weekend warriorhood more than any other among the martial arts is Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Perhaps straight Western boxing is more popular on a truly casual dilettante sort of level, but in terms of an art that, you know, everyday people have come to be really attracted to and apply themselves to, BJJ has been an absolute, you know, kind of almost pop culture phenomenon. And for many people, the intuitive appeal is this notion, and I realize this might kind of sound like a bit of an old chestnut line now, but this idea that with BJJ, you can overcome substantial differentials in size, strength, speed, cardio capacity, with effective use of leverage and body position and weight distribution and things like that. People love the idea, and I mean, to go back to what you were talking before about growing up, aspiring to be a Bruce Lee kind of character. I think a lot of people love that kind of holdover idea from the old martial arts movies that, you know, there is a way for the smaller, less strong person to have an advantage over the bigger, more muscle-bound person, perhaps. And, you know, people love the idea they can apply themselves to mastering a discipline for which your inherent physical disadvantages can not only be overcome, but overcome with serious interest accrued on top if you really apply yourself and drill hard and roll often and intimately familiarize yourself with the nuances of the art. So that's the kind of casual, again, dilettante, maybe outside observer understanding of why so many people have taken to BJJ so much. But from your more attuned and informed perspective as a black belt and as a coach, what do you think are the greatest benefits of learning BJJ specifically, and what advantages can it provide to people in terms of their development, both physically and mentally?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct on everything that you said, and that's one of the things I think draws a lot of people to jiu-jitsu is the idea that with proper technique and with proper leverage, you can have that advantage and have the ability to be able to control a violent situation, not through overpowering the individual, but through using a higher skill level. And one of the kind of memes you'll hear about jiu-jitsu is it's the art of weaponizing nerds, because it's very technical, and it definitely appeals to someone who has maybe like a chess mindset where it's very tactical. It's when you're rolling and when you're working with or against an opponent, time is slowed down to a certain degree, so there's a little bit more time to be able to process and have that strategy element where, okay, if I can shift my weight this way, it will give me a slight advantage, and then they figure out a way to counter that, and it's just a series of counter after counter after counter, and it's like, who has studied more, who knows the right angles, who knows the right timing and everything like that, less about who is stronger or necessarily more athletic. Now, with that said, you have an individual who is stronger and more athletic and has technical prowess, well, then you're in trouble. But I've seen lots of people who are much smaller, much younger, just completely dominate bigger people because they being on the ground. That's the other thing. I think one of the other things that people don't understand is we're so used to being up on our feet, moving around, running, walking. Things like boxing make sense to a normal person because you're standing. That's what we do in normal life. When you're on the ground, we don't know how to move on the ground inherently. When we're children, we do, and when I work with the kids, they will inherently figure things out a lot quicker than adults. And I was working with a new student today in class, and afterwards he's like, oh, I had a lot of fun, but I was really lost. Like, I didn't even know. And I'm like, yeah, we put you in these weird positions and asked you to move in weird ways that you've literally never, ever moved like that in your life, because that's what jiu-jitsu is. And you learn those kind of tactics and those techniques. And if someone doesn't know how to do that, and they don't know when they're putting themselves at risk when they're on the ground, they're really vulnerable, And on top of that, I think one of the other big advantages is when you're that close and you're on the ground, you've lessened the chance of a lucky strike, so to speak. You know, you're standing up and you could have someone who's very highly trained in boxing, we'll say, against a street fighter. Everything happens so fast that one lucky punch could connect and that could be it. Whereas when you're on the ground, it's slower, there's more control, but they just don't have the ability to generate that kind of momentum to give a one-hit knockout when you're that close with someone. You know, you've got gravity working against them and that sort of thing. So I think that those are some of the advantages. But another thing that, like, the technical side of it and how deep it is a super deep rabbit hole, and I study it all the time. Like what I know now is like so much more than what I knew even a year ago or 2 years ago, and what I teach now is different than what I taught a year ago or 2 years ago, because things are always evolving. I'm always getting a better understanding of it. So that's almost an addiction in of itself, is that there's always more knowledge to be gained. You can always peel that onion back and go into deeper and deeper layers of understanding every single technique. But one of the things that it has that a lot of other arts don't readily have is it's very easy to pressure test all of the techniques, because you roll with someone and they give you 100% resistance, and then you see, is it working or is it not working? If it's not working, it doesn't mean that the technique's not working. It just means I don't understand it well enough, or I'm not applying it to the right situation. And you can troubleshoot all that in a much safer way than you could in like Muay Thai or something like that. That's what sparring does in Muay Thai, but you know, it's people don't like getting punched in the face, you know, and everything happens so fast that it's harder to learn, and sparring is a big part of that. But I think it's jiu-jitsu draws a lot of people because they can actually have that physical confrontation with someone but be friends afterwards, because no one really got punched in the face. So the ability to pressure test all the techniques, and, you know, okay, I actually got the technique we learned in class to work on a completely resisting grown adult, and they had to tap out and submit. Like, that's pretty amazing. So I think that's another reason that people are drawn to it. I think a couple other things I would say about that would be, for me, one of the things I like about it, compared to some of the other arts I do, is it also gives me a more gentle approach to handling a situation if I ever had to, you know, resolve some sort of a conflict. Where in Muay Thai, which is an art that I dearly love, if I had to resolve a conflict using Muay Thai, it would be with like an elbow to the face, and that's not a very gentle way to resolve a conflict. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you get to such a high level of, I mean, we changed the name of our gym to Control for a bunch of different reasons, but having that ability to control the outcome of a situation in whatever way that I feel is the best way to do that, where I could just pin someone to the ground and then, you know, ask them to reconsider their life choices at that moment, you know, without having to hurt them. That's a good power to have. I don't have to kick them in the groin, or you know what I'm saying. So it's like that I think is one of the nice aspects of jiu-jitsu. And then I think another big part of it, now this is a huge benefit of jiu-jitsu, but it's also one of the things that drives a lot of people away from it, is you really have to keep your ego in check, and you really will be put in your place, because there's always people better than you, and you will always get tapped out. I've been doing this a long time, and there's plenty of people on this planet that could kick my ass in jiu-jitsu, and that's just a reality of it. And so it helps you keep that ego in check and know that, like, you know, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to have to struggle, and I'm going to be set with all these you know, difficult challenges, and I just have to persevere through it. And that, I think, really helps you build a strong sense of, like I said, perseverance and confidence, to know that, look, I just had a 250 or 300 pound man sitting on my chest, pinning me to the ground, and it was miserable, but I survived, and I figured out a way to get out of that. And that's teaches a lot of good life lessons. But there are also a lot of people in our society today that just cannot handle that. Everything goes their way. I think life's easy. You get hit with some kind of an obstacle, and it's oh man, I don't like that. I don't like this big sweaty guy sitting on me and me feeling vulnerable and exposed and having to tap out and be submissive. And it's that is a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah, and dude, I mean, you use the expression weaponizing the nerds before. It's almost like, you talk about revenge of the nerds. I mean, it's like the nerds were the people who never had life easy for a lot of life. So it's almost like they have this art where, as you've sort of alluded to, it's a laboratory for learning. It's a laboratory for sort of pressure testing things under a real-time experimental situation. The nerds are dab-hand at that. It's almost like the ones who oppressed the nerds, they were the ones who always had this latent level of confirmation bias in everything that they did, because they could talk how they wanted to anyone and, push people around and stuff like that. And they were always getting this positive feedback coming back that, oh yeah, I can just push this nerdy little kid around and nothing's going to happen about it. Whereas, as you've alluded to, jiu-jitsu really can be the great leveler in that respect. Although, I must say, I'm very, I really appreciate the fact that you described it as kind of the great leveler with some important caveats and some important qualifications. I think a lot of people are swept away by the idea that, a 5'1", 105-pound woman up against a 6'4", 275-pound guy, as long as she's a black belt and he's got no belt, that's all that matters or whatever. And it's kind of like, okay, the scientific realities and the physical realities of things still get in the way a little bit. Yes, it's probably going to help her a hell of a lot more than someone without that kind of training. And that's why, I think jiu-jitsu can be very, very positive and very important for a lot of people to learn. But I think especially for women and people who are more physically vulnerable, it can be a really, really valuable string to your bow.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are so many examples. You'll see videos online all the time of women grappling. There's even young women, young girls grappling against grown adults. That if they're, it's kind of like a video game or a role-playing game or something like that. There's like stats, right? And so if my technical stat is through the roof, right, and your athletic stat is here, I may be able to overcome you even though my athletic stat is so low, right? It doesn't necessarily always mean it'll be that way, but there are times where if their athletic stat is this, they're this athletic, it may counteract your technical ability. But there are tons of examples of people who are much smaller being able to overcome people who are way bigger and way more athletic. But those are people who they didn't just take jiu-jitsu for a year, right? They've put a lot of time into learning the actual science and the leverage and the mechanics of every technique, and they have the timing down and they know when to do that. To go back to what you were saying, the athletic part of it, that obviously is a component. If you look at modern jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu, the competitive side of things, everyone in there, they're all monsters now. I mean, to the point where they're having to do drug testing now because they're just ripped. And so they've all realized, okay, well, we're all good at this jiu-jitsu thing. If I'm way stronger than this other person, I'm going to be able to win. So now it's this arms race of who's stronger, because technically they're all really good. So definitely the athletic part of it, that is a thing. But back and forth, I've seen 17-year-old high school kids, scrawny high school kids, beat grown men at my gym, and it's a slice of humble pie when you have a grown adult who watches UFC, and most grown men think that they could beat up just about anyone, even if they've had no training, and then you have a skinny, nerdy 17-year-old high school kid choke you out 5 times in a row. It's kind of a little bit of a wake-up call. So yes, there is that aspect to it. We also have to be realistic about the athletic side of it as well, though.
For sure. And I mean, there's something else that you said that I always find interesting is the fact that in BJJ, you have this, collectivist, group-oriented, rolling mentality and opportunity, this opportunity to practice under really full contact, full on conditions, really competition level conditions in many ways, for which there really is no analog with, most of the other martial arts, and certainly, as you mentioned, not the striking oriented arts. I mean, another thing you see a lot of videos of on YouTube is someone who's a black belt in BJJ diffusing some otherwise, situation that was about to kick off at a bar or something like that, just by putting their arms around someone and going, okay, just gently. Whereas, the comparable analog of the same person was a Muay Thai specialist is, throwing this elbow like an axe blade or this knee like a tortoise shell and possibly killing the person, depending on, like how big they are or how strong they are or whatever. So, yeah, it's great that the BJJ has this side of it where you can practice to competition level over and over and over again, and then when you actually, those fleeting situations where you do actually have to use it to diffuse a situation that was about to go ballistic, you can do so in a way for which no one gets hurt. It gets diffused in a very sort of mild way. Everyone's okay, just go to sleep, you're all right. As opposed to, just as opposed to anything for which someone gets struck, they fall over, hit their head, and, God forbid the rest, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. You reminded me of a story, and then you just finished by reminding me of another story. Did you ever see the video of Matt Serra, the ex-UFC fighter?
Yeah.
Did you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Diffuses that guy in the restaurant and this is a UFC. He's a multiple degree black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and but he's also a UFC fighter, and just gets on top of this guy, pins him down, and is just laughing. He's like, "It's okay, yeah, just relax." The guy's like, "I'm gonna kill you. He's like, "I'm sure you are," and he just completely neutralizes this guy without throwing any punches, any strikes, just gets in the mount and just sits on this guy, and the guy can't do anything about it until the police arrive. And I thought that was like perfect. And there's other examples of that with Ryan Hall and everything like that. The flip side of that is a story that a lot of my JKD instructors have told me is exactly what you just said, where it was a very high-level JKD practitioner who had a really bad day, went to the bar, was already in a bad mood, and someone started something with him, and he was like, "You know what? Fine, let's do this." Went outside, he threw one punch, knocked the guy out cold. The guy fell back, hit the back of his head on a cement planter, and it killed him. The guy ended up serving, I think it was something like 10 years in jail for involuntary manslaughter. And it was one of those things where, in hindsight, the guy readily admits, I should have just walked away from that situation, and we had an incident like that happen in Cleveland. I don't know that it was martial arts related, but people were downtown at the flats, and a fight broke out. One guy punched another guy, and he fell into the water down in the flats there, and ended up, he knocked him out. The guy's unconscious, falls in the water, and he drowns. And one punch, and now it's manslaughter. So, it's this kind of stuff. You do have to take that seriously, and these are the kind of things that I always talk to my students about, because we do grow up watching all these action films and martial arts films, and it's all make believe, it's all fantasy, it's amazing, it's wonderful, like John Wick and all that kind of stuff. But we have to step back from that fantasy and understand the reality that if you really hurt someone like that, you could end up serving jail time, which is or you could end up killing someone, which is even worse. So
what steps then do you take as a teacher? Because presumably there has got to be some, I mean, I hope it's a vanishingly small, but there's presumably, as a martial arts teacher, there's got to be some percentage of your potential, at least, clientele base who are the kind of people that are naturally inclined towards being belligerent and pugnacious anyway. So they're people that are inclined to start a fight, or they're not averse to getting into a fight. Then they go to a martial arts gym and they actually refine their technique. So they put an already explosive set of tools together in a more optimized way. How do you get people like that? How do you wheel them back from the the edge in terms of like, obviously there's a respect for the art, and there's a respect for the fact that this should only be used in, key situations and stuff like that. But how do you, I suppose you can never prevent or eliminate people from thinking and behaving the way that they do. But do you come across people that kind of match that broad profile? And if so, what are some steps you can take to ensure that they rein themselves in and only deploy the weapons that they have at hand in situations which demand them?
So that really depends on the individual and their ability to want to see that and change. We do get people that come through our academy like that. And because of the way that I structure the classes, because of the environment that I have spent a lot of time cultivating. I had someone literally tell me this a couple days ago, and I've gotten the same comment over and over again. And this woman came up to me and said, Dave, I really have to commend you. I look around at this group of people at your academy, and it is such a diverse group of people, men, women, different ages, different ethnicities, different everything. And they're like, the fact that everyone is here working together and comfortable with each other, that says a lot. And I'm like, that's been my goal. That's what I've wanted from my academy. The people that come in with that chip on their shoulder, they will see for me, what it is they sense that vibe of what we have there, and they sense that they do not fit in there. I have a environment where I'm always preaching, we train with each other, we don't train on each other. One of the reasons our gym is now called Control is for a lot of different reasons. A lot of it is about self-control, being able to control your ego, being able to work with someone and control your anger, being able to, when we spar with each other, have good control over ourselves so that we don't hurt someone, so that we can continue to train and be friends. And that environment is like very apparent. And when we had tons of people sparring tonight, and the entire time I'm screaming, use good control, chill out, relax, be playful, have fun, that kind of stuff. And so the people that come in with that real aggressive tendency, for me personally, for our gym, they realize they don't fit in there, and they will go somewhere else, and they will go seek out. Either they will see, oh, wait a minute, there's an alternative. I don't have to be a douchebag, and I could actually do this stuff with like real normal people and enjoy myself and learn and still challenge myself, but I don't have to carry this chip on my shoulder or really want to feel like I'm angry and want to hurt people. So either they see that and they understand what we're trying to achieve, or they will just go somewhere else. And there are plenty of gyms, especially nowadays with I love MMA, but the culture in MMA has shifted in a lot of ways where you're seeing this. It's not the traditional martial arts culture of honor and respect and discipline. There's a lot of bravado and showmanship and aggression and that sort of thing that not in all of the athletes, but you're seeing some of that. And so the person that is naturally drawn towards that, they will find a gym where there are other people that are in that same way. And those kind of situations, usually what it is it's someone who they're in it for themselves, and they only care about themselves. They only want to get better. They don't care about their training partners. They don't care about their environment. They don't care about their coaches. They'll jump from gym to gym to gym to get whatever they want. And so they won't stick with us. I can't necessarily change what's in their heart. I can show them another way, but those people don't stick around. And even if they are in the gym, I will eventually weed them out. There's a instructor in Japan that I know who has a wildly successful gym in Japan with something like 2,000 or 3,000 students. I mean, it's massive. And one of the bits of advice that he gave me is, you have to, if there's people in your gym that are poisoning your environment, no matter how talented they are, you have to get them out, because your culture and your environment, that's what keeps people coming back. And that's what keeps people wanting to show up to the gym, because they enjoy training with those people and they feel safe pushing their limits with these people who respect them and aren't there just using them as a heavy bag. So, if we do on chance get those people, and there has been those times where we've had those people where then I have to I step in and then I become the enforcer in a sense, where I have to spar with them or I have to roll with them and be like, I'm going to put it on you right now. And then afterwards I'm like, that sucked really bad, didn't it? Like, that was freaking miserable, wasn't it? And they're like, yeah, that really sucked. I'm like, that's how you're making everyone else feel, and that's not okay. And people either get that and they're like, oh shit, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was being such a douchebag, or they're like, their ego's too hurt, or they're like, well, I don't care, I'm just going to go somewhere else. And so that's what happens. But for me, it's less about, I think it's kind of naive that I think I can change everyone that has that chip on the shoulder. It's more about protecting my culture and protecting my environment and protecting my students. And then it's up to that individual to be like, hey, you can still push yourself, but you got to do it in a way where you're showing good control and you're respecting all of your other training partners. But yeah, that's essentially how those kind of things play out for us.
All right, I'm very happy to hear that you're maintaining the home and the environment and the culture that you've built, and then you've got a good filtration mechanism to brush those kinds of people aside, or at least move them on to more appropriate habitats when they obviously don't fit in. But let's move this on to a couple more arts now. So you mentioned Jeet Kune Do before. There's also Kali, which you teach there at Control. Two separate arts, but with some very important historical connections, some salient historical connections. So can you tell me about maybe just a little bit about that history and what you think are the advantages of both JKD as an empty-handed art and Kali as an art that has a weaponry wielding dimension to its practice?
Yeah, definitely. So Jeet Kune Do was the philosophy or the approach to martial arts that Bruce Lee developed, and it was an ever-evolving sort of philosophy. And I somewhat resist saying it was an art form. They usually say that Jun Fan Kung Fu was the specific art that he taught, but it was, if you look at each time frame that he was teaching, it was changing and evolving, and depending on who he was learning from and what new ideas he was bringing in, it was always changing. So with the idea of Jeet Kune Do or JKD, they kind of break that art into two camps. There's the original and the concepts, and the original side is, this is exactly what Bruce Lee taught before he passed away, so we just only teach exactly what he taught. And there's a lot of validity to that. There's a lot of amazing ideas that came out of what he was teaching at the time, but he did pass away really young, and if you look at his track record, he was constantly evolving. And I know, just for me personally, if I look at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or the Muay Thai, for example, that I was doing 5 years ago, it is light years different than what I'm doing today, just because I'm always evolving and improving and seeing new ways to do things. And I kind of think that Bruce Lee would have continued to do the same thing, because he was just a consummate researcher. One of his best friends, his number one students, one of the few people to be promoted as an instructor under him, was Dan Inosanto. And so Dan Inosanto continued, when Bruce Lee passed away, he continued carrying that flag of Jeet Kune Do, but he kept rolling with the idea of evolving it and developing it. And so his camp, so to speak, has become known as the Jeet Kune Do Concepts Camp, where it's, yes, we teach the things he taught during those eras, but we also take the concepts that he developed, or the philosophies, and we apply those philosophies to the other art forms, like Muay Thai, like Kali, like jiu-jitsu, like a lot of different arts. So the JKD Concepts group, which is the one that I have associated with, and I've trained under both camps, I just resonated a lot more with Dan Inosanto and one of my other instructors, Rick Fay. I resonated with those camps a lot more because it was more open-minded. And for Jeet Kune Do, Dan Inosanto kept researching and evolving, and big part of his research and evolution was in the Filipino martial arts, which is what Kali is. So Southeast Asian martial arts, Silat, Kali, which is a huge martial art as far as the amount of knowledge and wisdom that's in it. So he applied those Jeet Kune Do concepts to Kali, and kind of those arts started to kind of commingle and merge along with Muay Thai, along with jiu-jitsu, so that we can apply these learning tools to these other arts. So in the Jeet Kune Do, Kali side of things, the way we look at it is we do teach the original stuff that Bruce Lee taught. We take the principles and we apply them to the other arts. But I think one of the things that maybe differentiates that from like Muay Thai is there's a I look at the different arts as I kind of look at a triangle, so that we have like the art side of things, which is kind of the fancy, fun, flashy sort of techniques that you might see in an action film or a movie. The things that are really cool to be able to train and do, but they may be somewhat unrealistic unless you've really put a lot of time into it, right? You have the sport side of things, which is more like maybe what Muay Thai is a sport. So it's very streamlined to what works within this sport. There's rule set, so we make it as efficient as possible so that we can win at this sport. Okay, and there's certain things that we can and can't do in that sport because it's a sport. We can't poke people in the eyes or whatever. And then we have the combative side of things, and the combative side of things is the like the nitty-gritty, bare-bone stuff that you would do to keep yourself safe in a confrontation, self-defense type situation. And if it was a life-threatening situation, it gives you the tool sets to deal with that. And I think all three parts of that triangle, the art, the sport, and the combatives, are all very important. Now, the individual, it may differ what's more important. Some people are more into the art side of things. Some people are more into the sport side of things. Some people are more into the combatives. You're in you're military or police, combatives is going to be a little bit more important for you, right? You're a 50-year-old individual who's just looking for something fun and healthy to do. Maybe the art side of things is more important to you, right? You're young and you're athletic and you want to challenge yourself and push yourself. The sport side is a little bit more important. And so for Jeet Kune Do and Kali, the nice part about that is it allows us to address all three areas of that triangle. And so the JKD has sport elements to it. It has some very simple, very effective combative elements to it. And then when you introduce the Kali, it's the same thing. For weaponry, for empty hand, there's some very, very effective combative elements of that. A lot of special forces and military uses Kali. But then it has a really cool and amazing dynamic art side of things. A lot of people you see in modern day martial arts and action films, John Wick, Bourne Identity, all those kind of things, they're all of the fight choreographers, the stuntmen have all have some relationship to Dan Inosanto and have a Kali background. So most of the stuff you see in those movies is coming from Kali. And it's the artistic side of it, it's the fun, cool, flashy side of it, but that's a cool aspect to it. And then the sport side of it, yeah, there is a little bit of sport to Kali, with weaponry and creating rules and having sparring matches and stuff like that. But the cool thing about those two arts is it does give you all three sides of those triangle, and we can kind of touch on all of those elements.
Very cool, man. All right, you mentioned Muay Thai a couple of times now, so let's go there. The art that you and I spent most of those cold Cleveland mornings training. I proudly have my certificate, my MKG, what used to be MKG certificate, framed on the wall behind me.
No way, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, man, no, it was a proud moment. I mean, it really was. Like leveling up. It actually was a really, really special experience for me. When I find myself back in Cleveland, I got to hit you up and I got to aim for that next level up. But I also had a cool experience with Muay Thai a couple of years ago. I went to Thailand for the first time. I had a ringside seat at the Lumpini Stadium in Bangkok to watch one of the regular, big Thai boxing cards that they have on that town every weekend. And man, holy shit, the speed, the viciousness of the elbow strikes and knees, just the relentless output. And most of these dudes were like, 5'6" and 125 pounds dripping wet, plus all the pageantry and the fanfare at the event, the music between rounds, bets getting yelled out between fights. I mean, I hate to use like a cheesy pop culture reference here, a cheesy comparison, but straight up, it was like a scene from Kickboxer. Yeah. I mean, just from a childlike, wondrous point of view, it was just a real pleasure to witness, but absolutely, fucking brutal. But for you, training puff and stuff lay people like myself in the art of 8 limbs, what are some of the benefits that people can derive from training in this especially hardcore and energetically intensive discipline? Again, both in terms of their mental and physical development.
Yeah, Muay Thai is definitely one of the arts that I love Muay Thai. I've been to Lumpini as well, and it's amazing. And there's so much culture behind it that I'm always learning more about the cultural aspects of Muay Thai that make it just bigger and more amazing to me. But I think to answer your question, we have 5 core values that we preach in our kids program. And I don't highlight them as much in our adult program, but not as overtly as I do. Like, I literally start almost every single kids class with having the kids one by one list one of our core values. And to me, I think Muay Thai embodies all of those values just amazingly. So one of our values is control. So learning how to be able to control our bodies, to be able to move them in these very dynamic ways. We work with each other, we're kicking and punching each other, learning how to control our ability to apply force to someone. So can I throw a kick at you but still control it so that you can still practice, being able to have that sort of self-control, right? And I'll get back to the control in a second because there's some amazing elements of control in Muay Thai, but one of our values is control. Respect is a huge part of Muay Thai. If you watch, I like a lot of the things I'm seeing on One Championship, where they're getting a lot of the Thai fighters to come in and they're just brutally beating each other, and afterwards they're kneeling on the ground, they're paying respects to each other, they view each other as important human beings, to respect each other, and it's not this bravado and anger towards each other. It's thank you so much for challenging me, thank you for being such an amazing opponent, and that respect, that ability to still care for someone after you've had this amazing struggle and confrontation with them. I think that's just one of the most amazing parts of Muay Thai. So control, respect. Confidence is another thing. So if you've hit the Thai pads over and over and over again like you have, where you're just killing yourself and you're like, you know what, I made it through that. If I can make it through that, that gives me some confidence to be able to get through a lot of other hardships in my life, right? So the confidence that it can give you, plus the ability to know that you can handle yourself in some, potentially unfortunate situations, that kind of confidence that it can give to an average person is just amazing. Perseverance. So confidence, perseverance, those things go hand in hand. Muay Thai is the embodiment of perseverance, just over and over again kicking those pads, hitting those pads round after round, right? That's that learning, that perseverance, and that's one of the things that's helped me with my business is being a sole proprietor, where I'm literally doing everything. I'm cleaning the mats, I'm answering the phones, I'm doing the lesson plans, I'm teaching all the classes, I'm trying to squeeze patience in between, and then slowly over the years growing that business. If I didn't have good perseverance and if I didn't stick with it, I wouldn't be where I was today. Surviving COVID, getting through that, right? If Muay Thai has helped me learn that. The last one that we kind of talk about is focus. And focus, you put someone in front of you who's trying to punch you and kick you, and you got to defend yourself. You're going to be very focused. It's basically moving mindfulness meditation, because if your brain goes somewhere else, you're getting tagged. So like all of our 5 core values, it just really embodies those. And yes, when you watch it in a professional setting like Lumpini, it does look very violent and brutal. It's like, oh, I could never do that. But there's everything, there's layers to, right? Like there's, this art has something to offer to everyone. And the vast majority of my students, they spar. We had tons of people sparring tonight before class, and they're never going to enter a ring. They're never going to fight competitively, but they're pushing each other and challenging each other at a level that's good for them, and that's good. Right? That's giving them things that they didn't have before. They don't have to go to Thailand and be able to fight in Lumpini to be able to benefit from Muay Thai. The thing, going back to control, I think one other thing I would say that I think is just so beautiful about Muay Thai is part of the aesthetic of Muay Thai, and this is one of the things I think that I didn't really understand in the beginning, and as I've continued to learn and grow, that I've understood in a much deeper level now, is that part of the actual sport of Muay Thai, part of the scoring of Muay Thai, it's not just who hit the other guy more often, it's who was more poised and who was more composed and who was in better control of themselves during that conflict. And in a lot of ways, that is the essence of Muay Thai. You and I could go to Lumpini, you and I could fight, and you and I could punch each other and kick each other in the face the same amount of times. But if I show more control and calm composure, and I show that it doesn't affect me, and you're rattled every time I hit you, you may have actually hit me more times than I hit you, but because I was just composed and poised, I will win that fight. And that's a lot of things that I think a lot of Westerners don't understand, is when we look at modern MMA, it's who scored more points in a sense, who landed more blows. I'll go, yeah, that person definitely won. It's a different aesthetic because it has its roots in Buddhism. Part of that aesthetic from Buddhism got carried over into the scoring aspect of it is, okay, yeah, you both punched and kicked each other, but who is more calm and collective under pressure in that violent conflict? And that's really what Muay Thai is about, is can I put myself in a really horrible, shitty situation and still be really cool under pressure and show that it's not bothering me? And yes, you just kicked me in the leg and it hurt like hell, but I'm not even going to show that it bothered me. And that's another very powerful aspect, that you can take those lessons and apply those to everyday life so easily. So yes, no, I'm not really teaching people how to elbow each other in the face. I'm teaching them all of those values, and Muay Thai is a vehicle for me to be able to impart those values on people.
All right, I mean, just staying with this sort of general idea of the values you can take away from learning something like Muay Thai, and maybe the life lessons more generally. I don't want to take us into the weeds here too much, but I mean, in addition to anything you've already said, do you think there would be real upsides for society at large if more people learned martial arts beyond what might be sort of immediately obvious in terms of like self-defense, or even things like confidence and respect for others and things like that? Are there other lessons that if more and more people took the time to learn a martial art, do you think there would be benefits that would accrue to society at large? And if so, what do you think those upsides would be?
Oh, I mean, yeah, for sure. We do unfortunately live in a very stressed out and violent society, and I saw an article today, and I didn't get a chance to read the full thing. I was kind of skimming through it, but they were talking about it was actually a paper that was written, I forget which department it was, but it was by a philosophy PhD, and he was talking about the benefits of martial arts and whether it's beneficial to society versus other people who say that it's negative to society because it is promoting violence. And one of the things that I saw in that I thought was really interesting is there was in some of the studies that they've looked at, the longer that you've been in martial arts, the less violent and aggressive you end up becoming. And I know I've seen that myself, is like in the beginning, and you can see that with most new students. This is kind of like a funny little thing that I see all the time. If you're new to martial arts, you learn some cool technique, and then you run home to your wife or your girlfriend and you start to try and practice it on them, and they're like, get the fuck away from me. I don't stop twisting my wrist around and put me in this arm bar or something. I don't want that, but they just want to mess around with that because they got this new toy, right? That's like the total new student thing. Let me show you this cool kick I learned. Why are you hitting me in the leg or whatever? But then the longer you're in it, you realize, okay, this stuff is really powerful, and we have to treat it with respect, and we can cause a lot of damage with this. And I also have the confidence to know that if I'm in a shitty situation and someone's yelling at me, it's like, look, I know I could destroy you right now, but what's the point, right? Like, I don't need to get upset about this. Like, fine, yell at me, that's fine. Okay, we got it out of your system, good, now go on your way. And there is those benefits that if you're in the right environment, which is another reason why I cultivate the certain environment that I have, that the longer you're in it, the less violent and aggressive you will become. And I think, unfortunately, here in the U.S., we do see a lot of these, mass shootings and, road rage incidents and stuff like that. We're just a very stressed out culture, and having a very, I give people an outlet where it's socially acceptable to punch and kick and smash things in a safe way, so they can just dump all that aggression out, leave it at the gym, go home, and be so exhausted that they can't even yell at their significant other or whatever, right? So yeah, I do think that there is a ton of benefits, because we all need some sort of stress management, and getting that violence out in a healthy, appropriate way, I think that's a huge benefit to society.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And I guess finally this might be a good place to actually wind things down, just to circle back to your own ongoing practice of martial arts. I know you're not practicing as much these days, but what are some of the things? You mentioned you're always learning new things, you're always exploring new things, there's always something new to learn. What are some of the things that you're continuing to learn, and what are some of the things you're perhaps yet to learn as a martial artist?
Oh yeah, I'm like, I guess maybe to correct you a little bit, I practice all the time, every day. I'm always learning, I'm always growing. And so if I'm tonight, I was rolling with sparring with our group after class the entire time. The sparring, we have sparring before Muay Thai. If I'm not coaching brand new students, I'm on the mat sparring with all my guys. So I'm always constantly testing myself and continuing to try and evolve myself. But we are also very, very fortunate to live in the era of the internet. And right now, for being a martial arts instructor, the wealth of knowledge I have at my fingertips is astronomical. When I was growing up, I was lucky to be able to find someone's pirated VHS tape of some martial arts instructional that was grainy, and I would watch it over and over and over again, but that would be the only exposure I would get outside of the classes that I did. Gosh, nowadays everyone has an online academy. We have an online academy at our gym. You look at Instagram, you look at YouTube. There's gyms that I follow in Thailand that put out videos almost every single day of them sparring, teaching. The wealth of information, it's amazing. I am constantly just absorbing all of this. I buy way too many. I kind of joke with some of my students. We all have this addiction to buying instructional videos now, and we can't do anymore. I can't buy any more instructional jiu-jitsu videos or Muay Thai videos. And then one of us will come back in, and we have to admit that we relapsed. We're like, I just bought another one, right? But there's just so much information. So that's what I do. I spend my time watching this stuff on YouTube. And on top of that, I still do get to travel and train. My wife and I were just discussing my plans to go out to LA in October to do a 4-day camp with Dan and Asano. So like I still get to go and do these kind of training camps for myself, albeit I'm not in my own classes and training in my own classes. Like when I had a much smaller gym and I had a few students, I would be kicking the pads alongside everyone else. Well, when you have like 20 people in the room and some of them are brand new, I can't train for myself. I have to be helping everyone learn and actually acting as a coach. So I still do find those ways to go and I end up having to travel. So I travel to LA, or I'll travel to San Diego to work with someone like Roy Harris, or, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're looking at taking the family to Thailand next year, and there's a gym in Thailand that I absolutely have to go and visit. So I still try and create these opportunities, because one of the things for me that I've always loved about martial arts is that it is a never-ending journey. I'm always learning, I'm always bettering myself, and there's always opportunities for me to learn from different people and be able to expand my knowledge. So yeah, I have some fun things kind of on the horizon coming up, and then there's always going to be opportunities coming up down the road.
Yeah, man, I'm just so psyched to hear that you've still got that that you're still practicing as actively as you are. You're still learning with this just like raging thirst for knowledge, and that you have this like overall philosophy of I can keep upgrading and keep upgrading and keep upgrading, not just for yourself, but for the benefit of the people that you teach as well. Being able to share that knowledge, pay it forward, move it on, and continue the legacy. That's all part of it, right?
Yeah. It's an ever-changing, the way I look at it is it's an evolving and a very ever-changing art. It's a little bit, the arts that I teach are a little bit different than like a traditional system like karate, where a karate system, it was created by the master, and then those set of techniques is imparted onto the student, who then becomes the instructor and imparts those exact same set of techniques, and that's a traditional art, and it's cool. It's an amazing thing. But the arts that I teach are very, what they would call non-traditional, where they're always evolving, they're always changing. Muay Thai is a great example. You look at golden era Muay Thai versus modern Muay Thai, and the techniques and the tactics they use are different. And for me personally, I grew up learning more golden era style, but because, gosh, we're so fortunate to have YouTube and Instagram and all this kind of stuff, I can watch modern Muay Thai that's done in the ring matches that happened last night. I can watch guys at a gym sparring with each other, holding pads for each other yesterday, and see what they're doing right now at this very moment. And it allows me to be able to continue to update my knowledge and my understanding. So all of the arts, jiu-jitsu has changed so much since I started. Kali, all this stuff, it's always evolving and growing. And that's what attracts me to it, because I would get, I'm sure I have ADD, and if it was just that's it and I've learned it all and I've mastered it, I would get bored with it and I would move on to something else. So the ability to continue to grow and expand, that's what keeps me going with this stuff. One of the many reasons that keeps me going with it.
Well, man, I mean, if you'll excuse the serious dad joke pun, the digital era really is a good time to be alive and kicking. And I'm just I couldn't resist, man. I'm sorry.
That was too good.
Low hanging fruit, man. But dude, yeah, I'm so psyched that you'll continue to expand. I'm so thrilled to see you going from strength to strength, moving into a bigger facility, and just going from strength to strength with control and everything that you do, expanding your client repertoire and everything. I know you have so much great knowledge and just an amazing, your amazing font of experience to pass on to the people that are fortunate enough to be taught by you. So it's been a real pleasure having you here, man, and catching up with you after so long. It's been a hell of a lot of fun, super informative, super interesting throughout, and just so thank you so much for making the time to hang out a bit and chat again. Hopefully we'll cross paths back in the 216, although you did mention Thailand next year. That's not too far away from where I am, so who knows. But until then, all the very best with the gym and all that you do, and keep up all the excellent work that you do, my man.
Oh, Garrett, thank you so much for having me on. It was awesome getting to reconnect and getting to have this conversation with you and kind of get some of these ideas out. So thanks for giving me that platform to talk. And geez, I'm so happy to hear that things are going so well for you, and keep up all the amazing work you're doing with these podcasts. This is just it's so amazing.
You know I will, brother. All right, man. Well, until we do speak again, take care, be well, and keep on kicking. Couldn't resist again.
Take care, brother. So good seeing you.
See ya, man.
And they got me thinking.